Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Bear podcast. I'm your host GD, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be wrapping up what has been an intense post-race Abu Dhabi GP. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Vedant, Max Verstappen is the F1 2021 World Champion. At least he'll be leaving Abu Dhabi as one. Uh, Obviously, this was the worst case scenario that we were hoping wouldn't happen. But it's much, I think, it's worse than what we thought it would be. I am tired, I am flustered, and not even coffee can hide, the tiredness in my voice. I am falling asleep here. This is all obviously our fifth take to start this podcast, and hopefully we'll have a decent conversation over the next hour or so. But how are you feeling? It has been an intense 5 hours. But what are your thoughts?
Well, it's 1:40 a.m. in India, and all the decisions for tonight are finally in from Abu Dhabi, right? And I think that chai is very much necessary right now. But yeah, I was about to say that it's like that Murphy's Law thing that everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and we never. I mean, yes, we were half expecting things to go wrong in Abu Dhabi, things to take an ugly turn, but I mean, everyone was expecting it to be on track, right? That like either of them will turn into each other. No one was expecting this, and yeah, it's just a big disappointment from
Yeah,
everyone.
we all thought that the messenger of protests and post-race controversy would be Max Verstappen
Yeah,
and not FIA
not
themselves.
FIA. Yeah,
so, you point that out pretty well. But obviously, now, if just I want to point this out, if you look back to our preseason podcast, right? We said that 21 races was the absolute maximum that we wanted in a championship, and look what happened with one more race on the calendar.
yeah,
Um, it's a weird feeling because obviously the championship is over, but in one way the championship is over, but it just doesn't feel like it. Feels like there's more, and by that I don't allude to the fact that whatever Mercedes is intending to do, which we'll cover in this podcast, but just from a racing point of view, it just doesn't feel like that the championship is over. It just feels like there's more to come, or it's like there's a sense of incompleteness in a way that I can't really describe very well at this moment. But I'm pretty sure you understand what I'm trying to say here.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. The sense of satisfaction that we receive while watching motorsports and good racing is not there. The the stuff that happened on track today, like not the stuff that happened on track, but the decisions around it and the controversy around it, it does not make for a fitting end to what this season has been, and that is the most
Exactly.
disappointing part. I mean, see, FIA have been this inconsistent throughout the season, and we can give them that, no problem. But the end to this spectacular season has been disappointing for racing and for Formula One as a whole.
Yeah, and not like the Grand Prix itself was exciting after the first five corners
Yeah.
itself. It was a pretty placid Grand Prix thanks to what was a commanding, race from Lewis Hamilton to say the least. He was in control from lap one until whenever the safety car came out, lap 50 or so. But we'll get on to that, once we just cover what has come out of race control, I guess, over the last 2 hours. So obviously Mercedes launched two protests. The first protest was regarding the fact that Max Verstappen apparently overtook uh, Lewis Hamilton behind the safety car, and the second protest was regarding the safety car regulations and the way there was the safety car restart on the last lap of the race. Now both of those appeals were thrown out, and we will be covering those appeals in detail right here. But once those appeals were thrown out, Mercedes have lodged an intention to appeal the dismissal of the race classification protest, which was their second protest. They now have a 72-hour window to decide whether they will proceed with an appeal to the ICA, that is the FIA International Court of Appeal. And I guess there are a lot of questions coming out of this. What is surprising is that Lewis, obviously, we didn't see him in the post race pen. We all obviously saw him in the post race interview at under the podium. but he didn't fulfill any of his media duties, and I'll be interested to know most of all, what does Lewis think of all of this. Now, regarding the first appeal, Vedant, let's cover those appeals right away,
Yeah.
one by one. Regarding the first appeal, obviously Mercedes thought that since Max Verstappen was just slightly ahead, they might be able to get Max a 5 second time penalty, but obviously that was thrown out on the basis that Max was not ahead at the start line. But Max is obviously allowed to be side by side with Lewis Hamilton, and obviously Red Bull argued the fact that both drivers were really slow and they were just going on and off throttle, which was my opinion too of it. But I guess the way to interpret the rules here is or the point of contention was what is an overtake, or and how would you classify that behind a safety car, and how much time would you give a driver to give back a position if he ends up overtaking another driver behind the safety car. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, what Max Verstappen did was, he was trying to intimidate Lewis Hamilton in a way, right? We all know that. But the way he did it was quite tricky, and it could have cost him a lot. Because just assume this, had like Lewis Hamilton was right beside Max Verstappen, all Lewis had to do was, you know, uh, push the brakes a little harder, and Max would have gone a little further ahead than he did. So he might have gone, uh, his front wheel to Lewis's front wing, so at least a wing ahead, and that would have been real evidence for Mercedes for that protest. But since that kind of Max never got that kind of advantage, it was only inches at the max. It was never really contentious, and it wasn't any advantage that Max gained. But yeah, it was very tricky. It I mean, had Max Verstappen gone even a quarter of a car length ahead of Lewis Hamilton, just put his front wheel ahead of Lewis's front wheel, I think Mercedes would have had a pretty strong case for that overtake.
I guess, but I'm pretty sure they would have looked at the data and the throttle and brake traces
Yeah,
during that time, and I still feel they would have come to the same decision as long as Max didn't overtake and do something dangerous, I guess, or he wasn't ahead at the line. But obviously, though, that appeal has been thrown out, and Mercedes is satisfied with the result or the decision of the stewards. What is in contention at the moment is the second protest that was dismissed, which Mercedes will be has said that they intend to appeal that in the International Court of Arbitration. Now, obviously, the second protest was regarding the fact that the procedure that was followed by Michael Massey to let only 5 of the 8 lapped cars through under the safety car and then restart the race on the same lap as at the end of the same lap
yeah,
when the lapped cars overtook the leader and the safety car is the point of contention. Now, if you read the rules, obviously the articles or the section in the sporting regulations article number that talks about this particular breach of rule is 48.12, which has been pointed out by everyone on Twitter. And the first paragraph of the article reads, if the clerk of the course considers it safe to do so, and the message lapped cars may now overtake has been sent to all competitors via the official messaging system, any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap and safety car. Now, obviously, the point of contention again was this particular word "any" and not, and the fact that it was any and not all,
yeah.
which justified the fact that Michael Massey can slice and dice whatever he wants and do whatever he wants regarding which cars need to be let through and which cars not. And obviously there are more parts to this. Obviously there's section 15.3, which basically gives Michael Massey overriding authority over any decisions regarding the use of safety car, which is being questioned right now, and we'll address that in a separate question. But this got thrown out. However, like I said, Mercedes will be protesting that, and if you read the rest of the article, 48.12, I think the point of contention that Mercedes will bring up is in the third paragraph, so like the last sentence of the third paragraph, which says, unless the clerk of the course considers the presence of the safety car is still necessary, once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. So I think that is the important quote there, the following lap. Now, obviously, like I said again, just before this, Article 15.3 was quoted by the stewards in their decision document, I think, and that is the overriding factor here, which allows Michael Masi to essentially call the race as he sees fit. Now, people have also questioned the fact that why were there two messages? First, there was overtaking will not be permitted, and then there was that these cars are supposed to overtake. And I think that is not the controversial part because of the fact that Michael Masi is allowed to control when and when not the cars will be overtaken. Obviously, the two messages, usually you only issue the one message that lap cars are now allowed to overtake whenever that is whenever they are free to do so. But the two messages is confusing, but it's nothing irregular or illegal from Michael Masi, to say the least. But like I pointed out, the point of contention will be that code that says that the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. So what are your thoughts on this, Vedant, and where do you see this appeal going?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't know. It was a very tricky situation for Michael Masi and for his team. I think Michael Masi, when Christian Horner called up Michael Masi on the radio, and he was like, "Why aren't lap cars being allowed to unlap?" So Michael Masi said, "Okay, see, my first job is to ensure that Latifi's car is out, right, and safety of the marshals, and okay, that was taken care of and everything that followed. But yeah, I think since Michael Masi has an overriding factor and control with him, he can use it. And so basically, and we saw this in Baku as well. They threw in a red flag so that we can have two laps of racing. So I think that was the thought process behind for Michael, that we can have at least one lap of racing basically. But it was a pretty sticky situation.
Yeah, obviously, that brings up a lot of questions that we're going to address.
Yeah.
I have that in my notes, but I want to know what are your thoughts specifically regarding this particular process. What happened? Do you think it was right of Michael Masi to do what he did? Do you think Mercedes are going to get anywhere with this particular appeal in the International Court of Arbitration? Because I want to remind you that in 2007, when Kimi won the World Championship, at that time Lewis Hamilton finished second by 1 point. He finished seventh in the race because of gearbox issues. But there were a couple drivers. I think I think it might have been Nico Rosberg. I think him and someone else, maybe Robert Kubica. The temperatures of their fuel was measured, I think, after the race, and it was lower than whatever was required of it, or something like that. And McLaren appealed that. The FIA dismissed it, and McLaren went to the ICA once again to appeal that decision. But because of what was said as whatever the I'm forgetting the word, but the accuracy of measurement was not good enough to penalize those teams and disqualify those drivers from the race. So basically, which is why Lewis Hamilton lost out on the championship. But even at that time, Lewis Hamilton came out and said that winning the championship in the ICA was not the way he wanted to win the championship. Which is why I said it'll be interesting to see what Lewis thinks of all of this appeal that Mercedes is doing. But yeah, I want to know your thoughts specifically to this particular, whether Mercedes are going to get anywhere with all these appeals. And whether this is worse for them, whatever they are doing.
Yeah, I don't think Mercedes will get anywhere with that appeal, honestly, because I think the ICA is a very, very high body. It's not a FIA steward's office where you can appeal and anything like that. It is a much more sophisticated body of, much more sophisticated body. And I think challenging a world championship there, first of all, it might seem a little silly and petty, and I'm very frank here, right? But I think secondly, they won't deal with this. Had it been a major issue, a major controversy like the Crashgate or the Spygate or something like that, those are the things that the ICA needs to look into, right? And I think the championship and the racing, things like that, don't really fall under the jurisdiction of the ICA per se. Obviously, it's like the Supreme Court, and they will hear to any cases that come to them. But yeah, then again, it's it's not the kind of cases they would usually get, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm skeptical of the fact that the ICF falls under the FIA's umbrella, so it's unlikely that they'll give you a different decision to already what has been said and done. So, do you feel that Mercedes should go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport instead straight away to appeal this particular decision and the World Championship?
I mean, see, it's a very sticky situation, and I think Toto Wolff is going to do anything in his power to get these decisions at least reviewed, and if it means to go it if this means going to the international court, I think he would do that, because I mean, yeah, I think that's how I see it, or how I see Toto
I mean,
Wolff
yeah,
going about
the
it.
way I look at it is like drawing this out is not good for anyone, not for Mercedes, not for Red Bull, not for whoever the eventual winner is, and not especially not for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, Mercedes has the right to appeal. So if they do it, they're simply exercising their right, and there's nothing wrong about that. But the secondary effects of these, of whatever, if they choose to appeal, is not going to be helpful to anyone really, and it's a lose-lose situation for everyone. And I mean, I wouldn't think that Lewis would want to win his eighth title in such a fashion. So I don't
Yeah.
know if how much Lewis is involved with these discussions with Toto, but uh, you know um, I mean, Lewis was very gracious in defeat after the race. He was very great. He gave a really good interview. He was very calm, and he was just and it is what you would expect from a seven-time world champion. And even if you look in 2007, both Lewis and Fernando said that winning, like I said before, winning the world championship in a court of appeal, would not be the way they would want to win. So again, I'll be interested to see what Lewis thinks of all of this. And again, Lewis and his dad both congratulated Max and his family. Max and his dad after the race, and it seemed like that would have been the end all and be all of the race, which is why. Even though the race had finished, I had jumped straight to Twitter to see, what the reaction was and whether Mercedes were gonna appeal it. That particular scene after the race gave me some hope that Mercedes might just let this slide. They might just let it be and accept what has been.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lewis did not attend the post race press events because of this. Basically, that Mercedes were planning to appeal and everything like that. So had Lewis attended the pressers, he would have been, still he would have been gracious in defeat, and he would have been a grace, just a nice vice champion, basically, and all his words would have taken the weight of Mercedes's appeals away.
Appeal away.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what Mercedes was trying to do when I mean, that's what I think, that they did not allow Lewis to attend those pressers, and instead they put all the weight in these protests.
Yeah, and I think the way, obviously, usually throughout the season, we've seen Lewis angry, we've seen him grumpy, we've seen him a little upset at times. But the way he approached this last weekend was what you would expect from a seven-time world champion. He was,
Absolutely.
especially after the qualifying session where he lost out to Max Verstappen by almost four tenths,
Four
which
tenths,
is a
yeah.
huge margin. Catering to the fact that the Mercedes has been fast all weekend long over the last couple of months, especially. And in the post qualifying interview, Lewis was really calm. He didn't seem upset a lot by his performance, and it just seemed like I think I texted you and I said, Lewis has either accepted the fact that Red Bull are really fast and he's already made peace with it, or he's very quietly confident in the fact that no matter what, he's gonna win tomorrow. And the start of the race just showed that how confident he was. His reaction time was 0.25 seconds. I think any reaction time below 0.2 seconds is technically considered a jump start, I believe, within the rules. So he was that quick, which just goes to show how confident he was in his ability. And then, like I said, it was a controlled race through and through from Lewis. And in my opinion, even if he was penalized 5 seconds for his first incident with Max Verstappen on lap one, Lewis would have still won the race and arguably the championship, because he would have finished more than 5 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen with the way the race was panning out, because Max didn't have the pace to close the gap between himself and Lewis, even on the fresh set of hards that he took under the virtual safety car.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, I mean, as you said, and given the fact that Max was on soft tires, and for Lewis to take that start, and the way he did it was absolutely sensational. And I mean, yes, Max Verstappen went for that move on the first lap, which came undone, and we might talk about it later. But the way Lewis Hamilton took that start and maintained that lead was just the defining thing that a 7-time and potential 8-time world champion is capable of doing.
And the race was arguably, like with everything that has happened. I don't mean before the penalties and the safety car restart, but arguably the race was won and lost in that first corner for Lewis Hamilton.
Absolutely.
For the first 50 laps, Lewis won that race by overtaking Max Verstappen on that first corner.
Yeah.
And arguably, he lost it because of the very same reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a performance from him this weekend. And even on the last lap, Lewis didn't make it easy for Max Verstappen. They were neck and neck through sector 2, and it was only in the third sector, where it's impossible to be side by side basically racing, that Max was able to get ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Otherwise, Lewis did not make it easy even on those old tires, while Max was on fresh softs, for him to be able to overtake him. So that just goes to show how hard he tried today, to be the 8th-time world champion. Obviously, even though he didn't get the world championship, Mercedes did put another feather in there. Whatever that quote is.
Yeah.
But obviously they are 8-time world champions, 8th consecutive world championship for them, constructors, so that is huge. No other constructor has dominated the sport that much. But now let's get into the specific questions here that we have regarding the discussion we've had so far. First of all, why did Michael Massey not throw a red flag? All of this could have been avoided just by simply throwing a red flag. Now, the entire season, Michael Massey has thrown a red flag for the smallest of reasons.
Yeah.
And now when he has a chance to, make it less controversial and more exciting, he goes for the safety car and makes it way more controversial than it needs to be. And I think it was Karun Chandhok on Skypad. He said that he had a chat with Michael Massey before the race, and he basically asked Michael Massey that would he throw out a red flag if an incident like Latifi's accident occurred, and Michael Massey was like, no, we would only go with a safety car, and Karun Chandhok did not go ahead and list what the reason was behind this particular decision by Michael Massey. But even before the race, we knew that Karun Chandhok knew that Michael Massey won't be throwing a red flag, which is so surprising. Like, why not? Why go for a 1-lap race, make it farcical, make it controversial, when you could have just thrown a red flag and given everyone an 8-lap sprint to finish the world championship?
I mean, I think it comes right down to the fact that the FIA and Michael Massey have been inconsistent this season. As you said, they have thrown out red flags for small little things, and they have
that's been here. Like you said earlier, they did that in Baku with 2 laps remaining. So why not now?
Yeah, exactly. So earlier the precedent for red flags would have been to repair the barriers, right? But I think in Baku there was no damage to the barrier, and even that damage was not a safety issue for the drivers, because it was on the sidewall and not on a braking spot per se.
Well, in Baku, the safety issue was that, Max Verstappen's car was right there on the straight. And it's not a very wide straight.
But they were going through the pit lane for 3 laps. And then the red flag happened.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so, and again, that red flag happened so that they could have 2 laps of racing, and basically, the race did not finish behind the safety car. And yeah,
exactly.
Once again, this was exactly the same thing. And again, inconsistent.
And people have been saying that Michael Massey, he doesn't know it. He's making decisions under pressure. But clearly, this was deliberate. Because if he had decided prior to the race that I'm not going to throw a red flag today, this was deliberate, and it was definitely a deliberate attempt to get the race going and make it as short as possible and as exciting as possible. Which brings me to the next question: why is the FIA trying to put up a show for F1? Is that their job, or is FIA's job to enforce the rules and simply do that regardless of the outcome of the race, of the championship, and the entertainment value of the sport itself?
I mean, that's what we have been asking for a year now, right? I mean, again,
Because you could say, like I said about the following lap rule, that the race could have ended under safety car if Michael Massey did not want to throw a red flag.
yeah,
And obviously that would not have been the end we expected, but it would have been way less controversial than it is now. What is Michael Massey trying to do? What is motor racing according to Michael Massey? Like he said, he told Toto Wolff.
yeah, and I mean, I think if you look at the second half of the season, I think I mean, if you look at the trends, look at the incidents involving Max and Lewis, the penalties and the reprimands and everything like that, and I think we talked about this in the earlier podcast as well. In the preview podcast, what the people on the WTF1 podcast said, basically,
Yeah,
the latter part of the season when we could see that this was going to be a epic championship and it would go down to Abu Dhabi. I think that's when the influence of FIA and all this stuff started happening. But yeah, it's not right. It's not right. The FIA are not. I mean, yeah, they are like umpires in cricket, and umpires don't.
yeah.
Yeah, umpires don't give a 4 or a 6 just because it will make a match exciting. If yeah, I mean, basically that, right?
Uh, yeah, I mean, and obviously, the sights have been on the top of the grid on Max and Lewis. But obviously, other people, because of that safety car decision, were also affected. Only 5 cars were let go. So clearly, Carlos Sainz, who was stuck behind Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll, suffered because he had Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly on his tail at the restart, trying to overtake him, and arguably, he could have lost his podium because of that particular decision. Because Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel's cars were slower compared to his, arguably.
Yeah.
So it obviously had effects throughout the grid and not just on Max and Lewis's championship, but arguably all of that is not as important as as the championship decided itself. And like you pointed out, we covered that in the Abu Dhabi race preview, but obviously uh, it was a little. It was a huge discussion and a little too late.
Yeah.
So I guess not people didn't really hear it, but basically, and it's not the first time, obviously Tommy on WTF1 podcast points it out every now and then, and that the fact that, FIA genuinely try to influence the championship and make it more exciting with the decisions they make. And this is not the first time that they have done this. They've done this in the past multiple times. I can't come up with an example because my F1 history is not that great. But, I genuinely tend to confuse things. But, it just goes to show, like we talked about, the incident in Brazil. We talked about what happened in Jeddah. If Lewis had gotten a reprimand, he would have had a 10-place grid penalty or something. And then if Max was given a 10-second penalty, that is ideally, a 30-second penalty, post-race penalty, so he would have not finished second and he would have been behind on points going into this race. So all of those things, which just goes to show that what is FIA trying to do. And if well, I guess this question is like a little later, so I'll come to that later. But let's talk about obviously we mentioned Article 15.3 a few times in this conversation, and it makes more or less Michael Massey unaccountable for decisions he makes regarding quite a few factors in the race, right? And one of those factors is the use of safety car. So the article basically states that Michael Massey has overriding authority over the use of safety car, amongst other things. But what can be done to hold him accountable now? Like you mentioned cricket earlier, right? In cricket, we have the review system now.
Yeah.
We have the cricket DRS.
Yeah.
If you want to call it we have that. Can F1 FIA implement something like that to hold Michael Massey accountable? Because the question is, obviously Michael Massey has overriding authority. But in what sense? Again, is it to make racing more exciting? Is it to make racing safer? Because along with that particular article, there's also 100-page sporting regulation rule book that says, that points out the way safety cars have to be used, how safety car restart should be, and things like that, which is, all the articles listed under section 48. So is that just a guideline then, just a suggestion for Michael Masi? Or, how can this be policed better, so that we get, I wouldn't say better racing, but fair racing, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that the race director has an overriding authority is good, because there are certain.
It has to be absolute.
Yeah, there are certain.
You can't waste time to make decisions. That's for sure. And we wouldn't like. We have said this again and again. That we don't want decisions to be made after the race. If there's a way to make decisions during the race, do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are certain situations where you need an overriding authority, and if Michael Masi is the race director and he's the senior most person and the one with that authority, it should be that. But I think he or anyone in his position should use that authority fairly. And I mean, there must be a review. Obviously, FIA must do some kind of audits and some kind of reviews after each race, and how each incident was taken control of. So I guess because for me, having that overriding authority is a must in a sport like Formula One, where there's a lot of safety at stake and a lot of different aspects. But yeah, review that and just make better use of it, basically. Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to add to it for me.
I mean, like you said, I agree with the fact that there has to be basically a single authoritarian individual person, right, to make decisions as quickly as possible. But I wonder if just adding a clause within the sporting regulations, it says overriding authority over safety car, overriding authority over a race start or whatever. I wonder if just simply adding the clause, because obviously, the F1 version of a review system is the appeals and the protests that we have after the race. But in the case of a world championship decider, it becomes a bit farcical, right? No one wants to win it this way. So my question is, can we add a clause that says, unless for safety reasons, the race director is supposed to follow the guidelines or the regulations laid out in this particular rule book, and only in the case of safety reasons and to prioritize safety, he can go away from the regulations that have been listed here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That is a no-brainer, because the reason they have that unprecedented, that authority is for certain reasons, and if they use that authority apart from those certain reasons, it is a shame. And I mean, I think after the season that we have had, FIA are going to have a very tough winter, and I think there is a lot of things that need to be reviewed, need to be audited, and need to be made better before the next season starts. And since there is a new technical regulations coming in, new cars coming in, you can say they have a symbolic clean sheet. They can make better use of. They can start a new era, basically. But yeah, I think if Michael Masi wants his legacy to be better, I think they need to do something about it.
I don't think at this point it's about Michael Masi's legacy.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just about making the right decisions, and making the fair decisions. I think Michael Masi may have gotten may have found himself in a position where there might be external forces, pushing him to, basically make racing more exciting, like we've talked before, and he might have gotten caught up in that. But I think it's in his best interest and in the sport's best interest to just do what they're meant to do, and that is basically enforce the rules. I wonder if having like a second person to help Michael Masi out with some things, like suppose like Michael Masi is a race director, right? but some of the procedural things are set in stone unless he has overriding authority, like the clerk of the race. So I wonder if having a second person alongside Michael Massey would help with that, and who could, while Michael Massey is looking into the more specific, detailed matters, this particular person could just carry on with the regulations, with the race, with the procedural things about the race, as listed out in the regulation, in the rule book, basically, allowing Michael Massey to concentrate on whatever he needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a good solution, but I think, and I mean, I don't know, it's a very complicated topic. Yeah, and I mean, it's a long winter for them. There needs to be changes. There needs to be some changes, and yeah, we'll see what.
Definitely, and obviously the rules regarding safety car restarts will be looked at after this and will be discussed widely among in the community itself. But I guess the next question that arises from this is like, should the teams be allowed to contact the race director? I feel, now this is my opinion, I feel even in the case of an appeal, I don't think the teams need to be in that room except to just send them evidence. I feel all of that should be in a written form, or it should be basically relaying information. I don't feel teams need to be present or need to have an audio visual input to the race director, right? Everything can be said and done in words. It can be said and done through evidence, and that is what should be done. And I don't think the teams should be allowed. I mean, at the start of the season, the particular team radio stuff between the teams and Michael Massey was regarded as the best thing to happen to the sport, and clearly everyone wants to get rid of it. And I feel, when team principals or whoever from the team is reaching out to Michael Massey when all of this is going on, it is basically distracting Michael Massey, right? And they're trying to sway his opinion, they're trying to sway his decision, and I feel all of that should just not be required, should not be allowed. And it should just be a one-way communication. Michael Massey decides based on the information that he has available. He relays it to the team, and if the team has a problem with that, they appeal it after the race.
Yeah, but then again, it comes the topic that why are we deciding races and potentially championships after the race gets over?
Yeah, that is true. But would you rather have a safe race? Or have something as controversial as today? Because even when Christian Horner reached out to Michael Massey, today during the safety car, he was like, "Hey, why aren't you, letting the lap cars through?" And Michael Massey asked him for a minute and then explained that his safety is the first priority. Now, if he had just simply not taken that call, he might have been able to push those buttons faster, like he complained in the last race.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think a solution for this is that only the coordinator, the team coordinator, I think that's the sporting coordinator, or I'm forgetting the title, but only one designated person should be able to contact Michael Massey, and only in whatever situation it may be. When team principals contact Michael Massey, it gets a little too hectic for him, and because the team principals are much more, let's say, passionate at that given moment than the coordinator, than the designated person is. And I mean, we have seen this throughout the season, that whenever Toto Wolff or Christian Horner talk to Michael Massey, they are very aggressive. And when, the other people talk to Michael Massey, they are much more calmer and much more, civilized, I guess.
The communication is a lot more straightforward in that case. But I still feel like, even if you want to appeal it during the race, don't hinder with the function of, Michael Massey and what he's trying to do in the moment. If you want to send in an appeal, I'm pretty sure there are other channels that can be created or that are already available to the teams, to do that. Or maybe, someone should just be in charge of that, like Michael Massey should have a communication director or something in the steward's room to handle all of this, and then feed that information to Michael Massey whenever possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously that is something that the FIA should look into. And I guess the question is, did F1 lose some fans today, both old and new? It's been a tiresome day, and it's been a bit farcical. It's been a bit over the top. It's been a bit disappointing, underwhelming, and all the other adjectives. But do you feel, did F1 lose a few fans today, both old and new? And I don't think it's going to have a huge effect because, this is the end of the season, and in 3 months we'll forget it. But I still feel there will be some repercussions because of this.
I mean, yeah, as you know, as old fans, we like to call ourselves, like, not old, but you know,
I mean, I'm not that old.
yeah, but you know, not DTS fans basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we are, like, personally, I'm more disappointed than a newer fan might have been, I guess. But yeah, that's beside the point. But I don't think we lose any fans. I think Formula One is a wonderful sport. These situations happen, and I mean, I think even after Crashgate, I don't think we would have lost any more fans than, you know, after
Yeah, I
any
guess.
season. So yeah, I think the biggest
I
fan loss would have been after the 2005 USGP. But yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we just need time to reach out. I think it's like the same thing. After the Saudi Arabian GP, we were all feeling a little drained.
Yeah,
I think it's the same case here, but this time we have 3 months, 98 days to recharge from today. But I guess obviously both the drivers were deserving of the championship, regardless of whoever won today. It would have been a great result either way, as long as it finished on track, and it still is. It still is.
absolutely.
We have Max Verstappen as. I want to say, I don't want to say interim, but we have Max
He is the
Verstappen
champion
as
of the world, man.
2021 Formula One world
Yeah.
champion, absolutely on the top of the world. So I just want to put this to you. We obviously talked about. I just want to hear your response to when I put these questions to you. We obviously talked about how the safety car created this whole situation, and and Lewis Hamilton could have won. He was in charge of the race. He had a commanding lead and whatnot. Do you think? So there's two questions, one after the other. Do you think Lewis Hamilton was robbed of a race win?
By who? By the FIA? I don't think.
Yes, by the FIA. Just
Yeah.
like simply, was he robbed of a race win by the FIA or anyone really? Was this race his to win?
I mean, yes, this race was his to win. You know, that start was phenomenal, and he would have won the championship. But then again, it is a race where there would be safety cars, there would be red flags, there would be incidents, and I think
No, but the way again the way it was handled, because arguably there shouldn't have been any a safety car restart. It should have just ended under safety car.
yeah, but
Do you feel?
I mean,
Let's not think about a championship. If this was the first race of the season, do you think Lewis Hamilton would have been robbed of a race win? Looking at the result.
I don't think so. I mean, I personally do. See, once again, I'm very uncomfortable answering these questions because I might sound a bit biased, but yeah, it's
Well, my next question was going to be, was Lewis Hamilton robbed of a championship? But if you don't feel he was robbed of a race win, you definitely don't feel he was robbed of a championship. But if you ask me if Lewis Hamilton was robbed of a race win, I'd say yes. If you say, was Lewis Hamilton robbed of a championship, I'd say you tell me about it. I don't know. I can't make a decision there. So yeah. I feel that. But overall, what a season it has been, and obviously we'll be bringing our listeners the season review or the season recap in a week's time. So obviously I'm looking forward to that. But there's still a lot more to talk about on what happened today. This was obviously about Max and Lewis, and my God, there was so much to talk about. And obviously, Max will race with the number one next year on his car and on his jersey. That will be Max's number instead of 33. So for all the Max fans, if you still like the number 33, grab that merch before it disappears for at least the next year or so. But yeah, I don't know. Like, just one more thing. I don't know if you saw the replays, of Christian Horner and like his team on the pit wall. But the engineering director at Red Bull has nerves of steel. That man has ice in his veins. The last lap, I was sitting in my chair, and the last lap, my heart was just like, it was out of my chest. It was beating so hard, and the engineering director at Red Bull did not even flinch. Like, there were no emotions on his face at all. His legs were not trembling. He was not moving. I thought it was just insane to like watch that guy just not have any reaction at the safety car restart.
I mean, that is why he is at Red Bull at the pit wall, right? My legs are trembling just talking on this podcast. Yeah, but absolutely phenomenal.
But yeah, yeah. So let's talk about it. We already covered the disappointing stuff from the FIA. We already talked about Max and Lewis, but the one man who nearly made a huge difference in today's race, was the absolute animal, the absolute legend, Sergio Perez.
I mean, he made
That
a
man
difference.
didn't
He made
just-
a huge difference.
Yeah, that man didn't just defend from Lewis Hamilton to keep him behind. He slowed Lewis Hamilton down by 7 seconds within a space of a single lap. That is what he did. And Max Verstappen was, over 8.5 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton when both of them started fighting. Sergio and Lewis started fighting. And by the time that Lewis finally overtook Sergio, Max was less than a second and a half behind Lewis. What a guy, I mean, arguably, Sergio hasn't had a great season, like most of the drivers who changed teams. But I think, he made his contract from Red Bull worth it within, like, just by that one lap that he put in today. And, the next year's contract too, I feel.
Absolutely. I mean, if you take it out of context, if you just look at that racing without the fact that he was defending for his teammate or for the championship, everything like that, that bit of racing is unbelievable. You do not see Formula One cars in this era race like that, and what Sergio Perez did there was absolutely breathtaking, and I was jumping out of my seat, and I could not believe it because I couldn't comprehend what Sergio Perez was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Max. After qualifying, Max didn't say a lot, or didn't thank Perez a lot for his toe per se, because there were split opinions about how much the toe helped. According to Karan Chandok on the Skypad, the toe that Sergio Perez gave Max Verstappen during qualifying was worth less than a tenth, whereas Alex Brundle, he tweeted later on that the toe was worth over 2/10.
Yeah.
So there were split opinions about it, but Max Verstappen didn't really, give a thank you, a huge thank you, Sergio note yesterday.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it was
today,
it was a good
Max,
gesture, but yeah, nothing huge
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, but Max was like on it, thanking Sergio over and over again. But Sergio, in the post-race interview in the pen, did point out the fact that personally he didn't like to get involved in the championship battle, but given the fact that that was his duty, he did it as much as he could, and he was happy about the fact that he could help Max Verstappen without I guess adversely affecting, like he didn't crash into Lewis Hamilton or nothing super negative happened to Lewis's race in that particular fashion. But yeah, Sergio Perez really gave us one whole lap of breathtaking action today.
Yeah, and I mean,
and you have to give it to Red Bull too, right? They threw everything they could at Lewis Hamilton, and that is arguably what won them in the race in the end. Mercedes made a call. Obviously, it was very close to Mercedes. Lewis was rounding the last couple of corners when the safety car happened, so it was a little too late almost for them to not call Lewis in. And obviously, we have talked about this again. When you have track position and it's the end of the race, towards the end of the race, it's hard to pit from first position and give up track position to get new tires, because I'm pretty sure if Lewis had pitted, Max would have stayed out on his relatively fresher set of hards.
yeah, absolutely.
Even if Lewis was gonna be on softs or whatever.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely harder, but arguably that is that and the fact that safety car restart happened lost them the race today and arguably the championship. But yeah, you have to give it to Red Bull's pit wall. They threw everything at Lewis that they could, and they created the opportunity that they needed to win the race and the championship today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when they were starting from mediums, from softs, even though they could have gotten a better start, but everyone was still questioning their strategy and how they would have had to make two stops basically, one to get off softs and one towards the end of the race, and the way they handled the strategy and got on a newer set of hards just around midway basically, and try to hound back Hamilton when his hards would have dropped off towards the end. I think that opportunity was good, even though it would not have materialized to something, but it was still a good call. And then again, to get those softs and that bit of strategy in the safety car period was just unbelievable. And throughout the season, I think in the commentary they said that Red Bull have 17 pit stops faster. Like
Yeah.
they have 17 faster pit stops than Mercedes' fastest pit stop.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think Red Bull have been a better unit as a whole throughout the season.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and even today when, almost, it's not surprising, but, ironically, we've always seen Bottas up there, but today it was Sergio who was up there to help Max, and Valtteri was nowhere to be seen. He qualified sixth, didn't really give a toe to Lewis Hamilton. He was not asked to do that.
Yeah.
And then he fell to eighth, during the start of the race, and then was never up there in the battle, to influence the battle in any way when Mercedes needed him the most.
Yeah, I mean,
And there's
Bottas.
nothing, he could have done.
Yeah, Bottas has done the team game, has played the team game throughout his 5 seasons. And all those times, Lewis was still comfortable in the championship and would have won the championship eventually. But yeah, today, when they needed him the most and, absolutely the most, he was not quite there. And that was a bit. I mean, Lewis Hamilton definitely missed Valtteri Bottas today. And I think if Valtteri had qualified just beside Sergio Perez, 1, 2, 3,
Sergio?
so 1, 2, 3, 4, it would have been a very different race.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you there. And Valtteri did a cannonball,
Yeah.
in the paddock. That was pretty. I mean, that goes to show, Valtteri is done with this particular chapter of his time in F1, and he's looking forward to the next one. But now, before I forget, I nearly forgot one question, but obviously I was going to ask you about, what did you feel about Michael Massey not dishing out a penalty for the first lap incident between Max and Lewis? And we covered that a little bit, that, if the safety car thing didn't happen, Lewis would have won the race, even if he had a penalty from FIA for that particular incident. But what are your thoughts on that? Because that incident was not the only incident, on the racetrack that happened today. There was another incident similar to that between Fernando Alonso and Yuki Tsunoda, which wasn't penalized either. And in that case, Yuki Tsunoda kept track position, but it was Fernando Alonso who was attacking and went off track basically in the third sector, while trying to attack Yuki Tsunoda on the inside. And even that was not penalized.
Yeah, I mean,
So very surprising from the FIA once again. Inconsistent.
yeah,
But what do you feel about it? Because I feel like, a 5-second time penalty. See, like we said before, catching up is one thing and passing is another. And a 5-second penalty while keeping position for Hamilton would not have made a difference to his race, like we just said.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. And see, I mean, whatever their decision was, I assume. I mean, yeah, okay. I can agree with the decision, but I think the reasoning that they gave was way out of here and anything anyone could have comprehended, because they said that the time difference at the end of the lap was similar to what it was before the
Was that
incident,
before?
right?
Yeah.
But when you talk about lasting advantage, you talk about it at that corner, and that was what was surprising, that the talk.
I mean, at that corner, Max Verstappen was ahead and he was on track and he made that corner fair and square, like he has done in Imola, like he's done so many times before.
Absolutely. And Lewis Hamilton took the off track route and got that advantage, which lasted towards the end of the lap. So I see it
Yeah.
that way. And I think most of us see it that way. But for the FIA to take it, the lasting advantage, and change its meaning suddenly today and call it, at the end of the lap, count it at the end of the lap, I think that was pretty strange. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
don't know how
I thought
feel about
it should have been a 5-second time penalty at the least, and I feel like, with the way the pace is at the front, at the front of the pack, even that does not do enough justice. And I feel, unless you swap positions, because it was a fair move, it wasn't an unfair move, it was a fair move.
Yeah.
Unless you swap positions, you're not giving back the real advantage that is. But obviously Lewis Hamilton was quick to think on his feet, and he did the absolute right thing to keep his race alive. And even had he been penalized, like I said before, he would have won had the safety car thing not happened. But enough about Mercedes and Red Bull. The story is hopefully over, and we'll get the same results as we have today. Let's talk about the rest of the grid. Ferrari. Carlos Sainz beats Charles Leclerc in the driver standing.
Okay, so
I wouldn't say it's a hard pill to swallow for Charles Leclerc fans, but it definitely goes to show the quality of driver that Carlos Sainz is. He's the only one driver from amongst those who switched teams to have such a successful season and beat his teammate. And he finished 5th in the driver standing, so that goes to show a lot. And on top of that, his contract ends next year, at the end of next year. No, 2022 or 2023. I think it's the end of next year.
I think it's a 2-year contract, and because they were hoping to get Mick Schumacher at Ferrari for 2023.
Exactly. For 2020, so it ends at 2022, whereas Charles Leclerc was with the team until 2024, so I think the end of 2023 or something like that. What do you think is going to happen? Are they going to retain Carlos Sainz over Mick Schumacher, or do you think this is the opportunity Red Bull need? If Sergio Perez doesn't work out next year, to get Carlos Sainz back into the Red Bull family?
I think Red Bull could go for it, but I don't think Sainz would go for it, basically.
Yeah.
But I think Carlos Sainz has a real good opportunity. He came into the team as a second fiddle, and throughout the season he was consistent. He had his errors here and there, but he has been consistent as a whole package, and he has been with Charles Leclerc throughout the season. So to match Charles Leclerc, and we all know how highly rated Charles Leclerc is and how underrated Carlos Sainz is, basically. So to be neck and neck with Charles Leclerc throughout the season and get P5 in the championship is huge for Carlos Sainz. And I think Ferrari might want to reevaluate their plan to only have Carlos for 2 seasons and not more. And I think, if Ferrari, and I think I think the YouTube channel Perspective, I'm forgetting the guy's full name, but I think he posted a video that said that if we have a Ferrari champion next season, I would rather have it to be Carlos Sainz than Charles Leclerc. And I think he said that Charles Leclerc can win four more championships after that, but I think next season he wants it to be Carlos Sainz. And that's what I'm trying to say. If Ferrari can produce that car, I think Carlos Sainz has a real good opportunity to challenge for that title. And maybe it would be a two-way battle between Leclerc and Sainz, but he has got a real good chance.
I mean, there were rumors, midway through the season that Charles was not getting along with Mattia Binotto, and there was some rift between them. So who knows what's going on at Ferrari and what's going to happen in the future. It's always been an enigma, and it always will be, that particular team.
Yeah, but
it's always hard to say what's coming from them.
I'll tell you this. We'll do some sort of prediction review in our season review podcast, right? Uh-huh. And I think I have some sort of prediction that Carlos Sainz will end up ahead of Charles Leclerc at the end of the season. Okay. So let's see.
Yeah, maybe. And obviously, Leclerc's race got derailed after he went off track while Max Verstappen was joining after his pit stop. I'm not sure if it was an error because of that, or if it was an error, that was not associated with the fact that Max Verstappen was coming back on the racetrack. But regardless, that is what destroyed his race. But I think he got a single point at the end of the day. But overall, a great campaign from Ferrari after a disappointing 2020 season, finishing P3 in the Constructors' Championship with a fairly commanding lead, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. They have been pretty dominant in the second half of the season. Ferrari, like McLaren, have made their mistakes, but Ferrari have been on spot throughout the second half of the season and not given away an inch.
Absolutely, McLaren. Lando Norris getting unlucky for the 4th time in succession. Another slow puncture for him, destroying his race, finishing ninth, and then Danny Rick just having an anonymous race, after starting 10th, I think, today. But so yeah, disappointing from McLaren once again. But Alpha Tori, what a weekend from them. Yuki Tsunoda not only outqualified Pierre Gasly in a commanding way, but he also outraced him. Finishing P4, Yuki's best ever finish. He basically equaled Pierre's best ever finish in a Toro Rosso previously in his first season. So hopefully there's more to come from Yuki Tsunoda. But what a race from AlphaTauri, and just goes to show the pace that they have had, and if they had put a few more weekends together, they would have finished at least P5. Right now they finished behind Alpine in P6.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think in Bahrain we were talking about how quick Tsunoda is, how quick AlphaTauri is, and how quick Pierre Gasly is. Gasly was quick throughout the season, but AlphaTauri and Tsunoda could not get their weekends as a whole together. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a good end to the season, and it just like the last few races, and it just go. They would have been happy because it's not like their pace completely went off after testing, so they had the pace and they were competitive throughout, but just not putting those weekends together. I think once again the next season is a clean slate basically, and AlphaTauri can be hopeful because they have a good base to build upon.
Absolutely. Now talking about Alpine, Ocon again losing out to the VSC today, just like a couple more drivers, and Alonso again, having a bit of an anonymous race with everything that was going on and the spotlight being on the championship leaders. But Alonso, 2 years out of the sport, comes back and beats his teammate by 7 points. I think it's 81-74 at the end of the championship. So yeah, great season for Alonso, and he's been very clear about his disagreements with the FIA, and he's voiced his opinion over and over again. So it'll be interesting to see how Fernando continues to do that in his second career in F1. So stay tuned for all of that. Aston Martin once again. Nothing to talk about. Anonymous race for both Seb and Stroll, and then Alfa Romeo having a double retirement. Sad to see Kimi retire. Sad for us to see Kimi retire, during the race and not able to complete his last race. But I'm pretty sure Kimi was happy that his race got done before, compared to what he was expecting, another 40 laps on the track. So I'm pretty sure he was happier than all his fans and things like that. And obviously, Antonio Giovinazzi's career at the moment in F1 comes to a pause as he leaves for Formula E. Also, retiring on during the race, not being able to finish his last F1 GP for the moment. However, I feel he ended the season on a high, P9 in Jeddah, and hopefully he'll have a great Formula E career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was looking forward for, it was a dream and Kimi would not have done it, but I was looking forward for Kimi, maybe Seb, maybe Alonso, and the eventual world champion to
Yeah,
do.
where were the donuts?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was looking forward to it, but yeah, I guess we were not.
And it's just the way the race ended, I guess.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of forgot about it, and yeah, would have liked some donuts for sure.
Yeah, but I think.
But I guess Kimi was out, so
Yeah, that's what.
And Fernando's not going out yet,
Yeah.
and Hamilton was disappointed, and Verstappen doesn't really celebrate, in that fashion, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, even before Mercedes, protested, it just seemed like the celebrations were a little
Low key, yeah.
muted in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah, they were a little muted compared to what we have seen in the previous years.
Yeah.
But yeah, Williams had a great year finishing P8. The run of three great races in the middle of the season really gave them the points. I think they had a total of they had over 20 points for sure. And then obviously this was George Williams' last race with them. And Nicholas Latifi will have another teammate in the team next year in Alex Albon. But again, disappointing to see a double DNF
DNF,
from
yeah.
them. But I mean, it was Nicholas Latifi's DNF that really caused havoc today. And talking about Nicholas Latifi's DNF, who was partially responsible for it, Vedant?
Well, Mick Schumacher and who else? And I mean, see, there were memes and there were, predictions and theories that Mick Schumacher will do anything in his hands
The fans manifested it.
to to keep his father's legacy, and at least he did not crash into Lewis Hamilton himself. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty unfortunate for Mick and for Nicholas Latifi. But yeah, it was the end.
But
We
yeah, and
yeah.
we obviously didn't have Mr. Mazepin himself in the race. Obviously he tested positive for COVID, so hopefully it's weird that he got COVID. On race day.
Yeah.
Obviously he was there in qualifying and before. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I hope everyone around him who was there is either quarantining and is safe, and hopefully they all recover from COVID as soon as possible. But yeah, that is really the race recap. All the attention was obviously on the top two championship contenders, so there's not a whole lot point talking about it. But there are a lot of lasts in this race, like we've mentioned a few already. Last race for Giovinazzi, last race for Kimi, last race for Bottas at Mercedes. Bottas, having a record to himself that he has made 101 Q3 appearances for Mercedes in 101 weekends with Mercedes. So 100% Q3 record for Valtteri Bottas with Mercedes. Last race for George Russell and Williams. Next year he'll be hopefully challenging for the world title, and we might have a first-time world champion next year too in George Russell, based on what we get next year. Last race for Honda. Honda is once again world champion in their last season, in the final season F1 before they quit and come back once again. But you have to give it to Honda. The development curve that they had after leaving McLaren over the last 2-3 years has been insane, and all credit to them. I'm just happy that they had such a great finish. Obviously, they'll be involved with the Red Bull powertrains over the next couple of years, supporting them. But the Honda name will not be present on the grid. And in my opinion, Honda did produce a better power unit this year compared to Mercedes, and that is, it was arguably equal, or not as behind in performance, and way better on reliability, which was one of their biggest issues literally one season ago.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a great redemption arc for Honda from 2015 to now 2021, 6-7 years. It has been phenomenal. And Honda, and the leadership behind Honda, not just the track team, but the leadership behind Honda, can be proud of what they have achieved after a very disappointing return to Formula One with McLaren.
Yeah, absolutely. This was also the last race for our not so beloved 13-inch tires. Next year onwards, we'll have 18-inch tires, and hopefully they'll be a little more predictable and a lot more durable. When I say durable, I mean no crazy tire bursts or tire failures. When I say durable, I mean more raceable and things like that. So hopefully they'll give us better racing all in all. It was also the last race for, like Vedant puts it, architecturally intricate yet beautiful barge boards. All the words that I can't say together. And it was also the last race for this generation of cars, and arguably the fastest cars in F1 ever. At least for at least next year, but I doubt that. And besides all of that, obviously, John Todd retired from FIA this past week, so this was also the last race for him as the president of FIA. And both Ross Brawn and Pat Simons will be retiring from F1 from the technical committee. And I feel Stefano Domenicali is losing valuable members of his team at the moment, and hopefully he'll find other people to support him in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think I told you in the chat that Jean Todd's last race, I mean, he would have wished for a better last race and a less controversial one for him as the last race of his presidency. But I mean, it's what he did with FIA, and starting those initiatives like the Rising Stars program for the girls and all these things. It was a good initiative. Taking Formula E as a world championship and certain things like that. He has had a good and respectable tenure. There were moments where there was a lot of controversy, but yeah, that is true with Formula One as a whole. So no complaints there. But Ross Brawn and Pat Simmons, I think Formula One will miss them a lot. And
I mean, they are the architects behind the 2022 cars that are about to come.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish they would have stayed for at least one more season to oversee these cars, get into the
Yeah.
action, right? But yeah, I think uh, they have made the decisions after long careers, and they are too experienced for us to say anything else, right?
Yeah, hopefully they'll hang around as pundits, for us to hear from them and see,
Yeah, they might.
what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely, and they might even go in, FIA leadership basically, and
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what's to come from them. But yeah, what a season, Vedant, and it's finally come to an end. And we'll obviously look at all of this one last time. But before we conclude this podcast, we also have to talk about Formula 2. Obviously, the Formula 2 season came to an end a couple hours before the final race, final F1 race started at Abu Dhabi. Oscar Piastri was crowned champion on Saturday after sprint race 1, but that did not stop him from winning another feature race in F2 this morning. But I'll let Vedant carry on from here and explain to us what happened in F2 over the last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Oscar Piastri once again took pole position, his fifth in a row, and as I said last week, just unbelievable. I mean, Formula 2 is so competitive, and the way Oscar Piastri has been going about it, the calmness in his approach has been phenomenal. Uh, yeah, like last season, he was all over the place. He looked a little scared and nervous, but this season he has been a true champion.
But even after that, he still won the championship last year too.
Yeah, absolutely. But the championship last year was down to the wire, and it was. I think he won the championship while he was down in fourth or fifth, sixth place, and his teammates had to let him through or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, uh, this is his third championship in 3 years. Formula Renault, Formula 3, and Formula 2. He has won 3 championships as a rookie, and that is no easy feat, as we have said again and again and again. And only 2 other people have won this new rebranded Formula 2 series as rookies, and those are Charles Leclerc and George Russell. And that just shows that that just gives you the idea of the quality of the company he has, Oscar Piastri. He, as you said, he won the feature race, and yeah, he's Formula 2 champion. It's a great shame that he won't be racing anything next year, and it's he said that he can have 4 championships in a row if he gets to be champion of sitting on the couch. So that was pretty blunt.
So if not Carlos to Red Bull, is it Oscar Piastri to Red Bull in 2023 if Sergio doesn't work out next year?
I mean, Red Bull have way more options in Liam Lawson and Yuri Vips and Jehan Jaruwala.
And Oscar
And-
Piastri just beat them all by a mile.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think Red Bull will override their
Yeah.
academy drivers. Sergio Perez was a different, he was an exception.
It was a different scenario with
Yeah,
Sergio Perez,
absolutely.
and they had to
So-
make that exception given where they found themselves at the end of last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now coming on to the man who is joining Alpine, Guan Yu Zhou. He won race 2. He finished on the podium in the feature race, and I mean he basically helped him and Felipe Dragovic helped UNI Virtue Rossi to get second place in the team's championship on the last race. So yeah, that's good. And for Jehan Daruwala, he won a brilliant first race with a brilliant bit of defending. Felipe Dragovic was all over him, but Jehan did not give an inch. He finished 7th in the championship, which is a good result if you think about it. If you think about the bad luck and the penalties he has had. He finished ahead of Liam Lawson, who is so highly rated in the Red Bull Academy, and he finished just behind Yuri Vips, just some seven points behind Yuri Vips. So it was close, and yeah, I mean we don't know what his next season will bring us, but he is about to make some announcements very soon. Robert Schwartzman finished
Yeah,
second in the championship, and Prema obviously took the team's championship. But
Prema took the team's championship by like
yeah, I
half
mean,
as many points as
yeah, it's
as you and I virtuosi.
Prema is like Mercedes right now. They win in every championship basically, and they win
Yeah.
every year. But yeah, I think that's about it.
But yeah, and it was a great close to the F2 season 2. Obviously, the conversation does not end here. We'll be here next week sorry, I keep saying race recap with the season recap. We'll be talking about how we got to the point we got to, and obviously we'll be keeping an eye on the developing story of the Mercedes appeal, if they choose to go to ICA or not, and we'll keep bringing you more and more conversation throughout even the winter break. Obviously, racing doesn't stop. Racing resumes in January with Formula E and other junior racing series like the F4 UAE. So there'll be plenty to talk about even when F1 is getting ready for their next season in 2022 in March. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me, Vedant, today. It has been tiring. I know it's almost 3 a.m. in India.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being up. I know you have to go to work tomorrow morning. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind season, and I'm just so happy to have shared it with you. But yeah, we'll talk again in a week's time. Thank you for listening to us, and I'll catch you on the next one.